And we are live. If you already know who it is, my name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's get 7 in 2020, but enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FB Show, we're going to kick off our Week 5 game previews, breaking down every single Week 5 matchup, all through the lens of fantasy football. Up next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Chicago Bears for Thursday night. So if you're excited for this game preview, be sure to hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield. Also, smash that subscribe button like a power running back up the middle so you never miss a video from me. And last but not least, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture, specifically Twitter, where I love to answer your start-sit questions, trade offers, waiver wire pickups, and anything else fantasy football related. But before we get started with the Buccaneers and the Bears, there is something I want to talk about real quick, and I just want to address a content shift that's probably going to be taking place moving forward. So if you've been around the channel, first off, I appreciate you taking the time to check out any of my content. You may have noticed the route that I chose to tackle the weekly games, right? And that was, I wanted to do a game preview for each game, and I wanted to do a game recap for each game, and admittedly, that was a lot, and I knew it was going to be a ton of work, but it was something that I wanted to do because I knew, like, it would be something different, right? A lot of people just are used, if you take in fantasy content, it's very structured. It's very, on Tuesday, we're going to talk about waiver wire pickups. On Thursday, it's going to be the Thursday night preview. Friday is going to be a preview of all the games, and Monday is going to be the recap of what happened over the weekend, right? And that works. Like, that works for a lot of people, and I knew I could do it. But I wanted to do something different from what a lot of people were doing. So I decided I would tackle 32 videos essentially in a 3 or 4 day span, depending on how you break it down, previewing each game, then recapping each game. But I quickly realized, oh shit, that this is actually a ton of work. And while I don't mind it, it got to the point where I was really only doing 50% of the games, 40% of the games, 60% of the games. And while I was missing out on that extra, on the additional 30-40% of whatever I wasn't covering, there was fantasy advice that I just wasn't able to get to. And that was fantasy advice that would impact your team and things that you would need to know. And it just kind of got at me quite a bit of just realizing that, yes, it's cool that I have these ideas of, oh, I want to cover every single game individually. But by missing out on that 40%, I was doing you guys a disservice of not talking about the players you guys need to know information on. So, for example, I covered it last week, but I was going to reiterate it again. T.Y. Hilton, for example, is done. What you need to do with A.J. Green moving forward. There's a lot of just different examples. Kenyon Drake against the Panthers, right? There's just a lot of things that I either was or wasn't able to cover this week that is very important as we move down the stretch and we continue into 2020 for fantasy. So going forward, this is just a long-winded way of me saying I'm going to do things a little bit different. So if you start to see a change in content on the channel or any of the other places, that's another thing, right? Because I wasn't able, or because I was rapid firing videos out so quickly here on YouTube, I wasn't able to give attention to the website or the podcast, and that was something that is supposed to be a pillar and a structural foundation of the content that I do here. So if you see a content change moving forward, that is why. But let's get on to the game you guys are actually here for, and that is the Buccaneers taking on the Bears. So let's go over some game notes, break down the game just a little bit, then obviously go into some start-sit for the week. So both teams are 3-1 after a slow start for the Buccaneers in Week 1. They have bounced back quite significantly. Brady is playing pretty well, all things considered, even without Godwin. More on him in just a little bit. And the Bears are also surprising 3-1 as well, making the quarterback change last week to Nick Foles. Ironically enough, they are 0-1 with Nick Foles as the starting quarterback, and 3-0 when Mitch Trubisky starts. Just a fun little tidbit for you there. So the over-under for this game is 44.5, so not too high, not too low, a pretty middle standard over-under, all things considered, but the Bucs on the road are favored by 3.5. Despite that, though, Godwin is out with a hamstring injury, LaShawn McCoy is out with the ankle injury, and Justin Watson is ruled out with the chest injury, all players who are fantasy relevant, kind of, right? Is Shady McCoy, is Justin Watson fantasy relevant? Not really. Not really, all things considered, but they are names that you probably know if you play fantasy football. Leonard Fournette is a game-time decision. Dealing with that ankle injury. I do not expect him to play. So we're going to talk about Ronald Jones being a guy who should be able to start with confidence in this matchup. And then lastly, for Chicago, there are actually no injuries to report, and that is always a good thing, especially during the COVID times, right? We need as many players available to us as possible. So let's move over to some starts set now, right? So for the Buccaneers, you're going to start Brady. He's been on fire throughout the past few weeks or so. Stay in the flames. Keep starting Brady with confidence here. You're going to start Mike Evans again, naturally, right? No Chris Godwin. You were starting Mike Evans. You were going to start Mike Evans anyway, but Evans without Godwin's going to get that additional bump as well. Ronald Jones for me is a fine volume play. I'm starting him in a league because Derrick Henry, unfortunately, with the Titans, is probably going to miss this week in their game against the Bills. So Ronald Jones, he saw, I believe it was 16. How many carries did Ronald Jones get last week? It was 20. He got 20 carries for 100 and, let's see. Yeah, it was 20 carries for 111 yards. Also saw 9 targets and caught 6 passes. So Ronald Jones is going to see very much the same work as he did last week. Who did they play? Oh, no, who did they play? They played the Chargers. That's who it was. He's going to get the same work as he saw last week against the Chargers, and especially, again, if Fournette is out, expect that same thing. No shady, so Keyshawn Vaughn is likely going to get some run. You're not going to start Vaughn by any means, but he is just another name to keep in mind, especially for Dynasty. I know a lot of us Keyshawn Vaughn Dynasty owners have been itching to see our guy get on the field, and he got in the end zone last week, so hopefully he can continue his play this week against Chicago. Let's see. Gronk or Brait, because O.J. Howard tore his Achilles, right? That's another thing I didn't get to talk about last week. I'm going to try and stay away from these two players simply because, again, I don't know how this is going to shake out, and I'm going to stay away from situations where there's multiple tight ends involved. That doesn't seem like a fun game to play, all things considered, especially in a week where we do have bye weeks. Hawkinson's on a bye, Robert Tonyan's on a bye if you picked him up and you expected him to be a long-term solution for you at the tight end position. So I'm going to try and stay away here if I have to. It's just it's not something that I want to take much joy in, trying to decide if I should start Rob Gronkowski or Cameron Brate in my lineup in 2020. Moving over to the Bears, though, David Montgomery, if you have to start him, I get why, right? Again, very similar to Ronald Jones, he is going to be a volume play, especially with no Tariq Cohen, who tore his ACL 2 weeks ago. Montgomery hasn't been able to get it done, and he's a guy that I'm just waiting for it to happen, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried about if he actually can. I know there are some things going against him. Obviously, the offense is not the best, and even still, he's not getting the majority of work that he should, and it is simply just because when you look at how the games have transpired, they've had to come back pretty much in every single game, right? Week 1 versus Detroit was a comeback. The game versus the Giants was actually pretty controlled, but it was a low-scoring game. Atlanta was a comeback, and then Indianapolis was a loss, right? So it's not like they were in a position to give David Montgomery the ball 18 times a game. So if you look at his carry counts, right, 13, 16, 14, 10, we want these numbers to be higher, especially given the fact that he is the guy now. He is solely the guy now in Chicago. And even last week, though, without Tariq Cohen, the previous 3 weeks with Cohen on the field, 45, 53, 56% of snaps. Week 1 without Tariq, it's 86. So he's definitely going to see an increase of snap percentage. Now it's just a matter of him actually doing something with it. So hopefully his trajectory can go up. Good news, though, if you are a Montgomery owner, in 2 weeks he plays the Panthers, and that should be a good matchup for him there. In this matchup, though, I would look to see somewhere else if I can. If I can go somewhere else, I'd probably take that route. But if you have to start Montgomery, totally get it, especially where we're at. Maybe you have Adrian Peterson on a bye if you're starting Peterson weekly. Aaron Jones if you have him on a bye, right? Bye weeks are taking place now, so that is something that we're gonna have to monitor, and we're gonna have to be a little bit more flexible with our rosters moving forward. Allen Robinson, back-to-back games with 100 yards and a touchdown. So Robinson is on the up and up, but he is going to face a tough matchup here against Carlton Davis, who the Buccaneers have been using a bit in shadow coverage over the course of the past year and a half. So I actually have some numbers pulled up here, and this is courtesy of the Action Network. So Allen Robinson is the number 1 wide receiver for the Bears. We all know this, right? And what the Buccaneers have started doing with Carlton Davis is they've started to use him in shadow coverage. especially against top-tier wide receivers. So this goes back to 2019, and it is week 12 of 2019, week 16 of 2019, week 17 of 2019. Basically, I'll read the numbers. You guys can analyze them for yourself. I'm probably going to start Robinson before I even get through these numbers. I'm probably going to start Robinson because you have to, right? He's a guy who you drafted in like that second or third round territory. So he's likely going to be your top option. But admittedly, I'm not thrilled about it, and my expectations are a bit lower. If you want to pivot to another option, fine, by all means, go ahead, because we know that Robinson has always the potential to bust based on the offense that he plays in, right? But these are the numbers. So Carlton Davis, shadow coverage. Julio Jones, week 12, 2019, 5 receptions, 68 yards, and 0 touchdowns. He also saw 10 targets. DeAndre Hopkins, 9 targets, 5 receptions for 23 yards, and no touchdowns. Julio Jones, week 17, 2019, 13 targets, 7 receptions, 78 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Michael Thomas, 5 targets, and this is 2019, so this is week 1 here. This is 2020, week 1. Michael Thomas, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 17 yards. And then Keenan Allen, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 62 yards, 0 touchdowns. So basically, Carlton Davis has been locking down top-tier wide receivers here. And that does scare me a little bit with Allen Robinson. Personally, I'm still going to play him because I know for a fact the targets are going to be there. And that's just something that I just value a lot from the wide receiver position, especially for my team right now, given the fact that I lost Austin Eckler and I'm likely going to lose Derrick Henry this week. I need to play Allen Robinson just on the off chance that he is able to find his way into the end zone. I feel like I don't have much of a choice there. Yes, they are different positions, but I need to find a way to put points up on the board. And Allen Robinson, as we saw last week, even in garbage time, has the potential to finish with 100 yards and a touchdown on any given week. This Bucs defense, though, all things considered, though, is really, really good. I don't think it's been quite known yet just how good they are. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run through the numbers by position. So versus wide receivers right now, the Buccaneers are giving up 21.8 points per game, and that is basically towards the lower third. Against the lower. Where is it? And it's basically right around 20. They're right around 20th in the NFL, so that's not a great matchup for wide receivers. Against the quarterback position, they are 29th. Sorry, I have to count backwards here because it's not accurately listed. I basically have to do the math in my head. They are 4th against the quarterback position. They give up just 15 points per game to quarterback so far this year, and obviously Nick Foles is not a world burner by any means. Against the running back position, let's pull these up. There we go. Against the running back position, they give up just 16 points per game, and that is right around, let's do math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9th in the league. And then against tight ends, finally, they are 11th. So this, by and large, this is basically a top 10 defense, and it's close. It's closer to 10 than 5, right? But they just do a really good job of shutting down offenses here. There is something I want to pull up though, because I think this is actually an interesting note here. And this is actually something that we have to consider, right? Is who have they played? They've played New Orleans, Carolina, Denver without Drew Lock, and then the Chargers with a rookie quarterback. With that being said, they haven't faced world-burning talent, but the Chicago Bears team doesn't have world-burning talent. So I do expect this trend to continue for this week. If you can stream the Buccaneers defense, I do think they're a great play. Let's say you have the Titans defense. Let's say you have the Bills defense. I think the Buccaneers defense is a great play for you this week, Thursday night. But that is going to do it for my Buccaneers and Bears Thursday night game preview. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. Let me know who you're starting and sitting in the comments section. You can also follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. Again, thank you so much for watching. And remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.